readers, today I've got a list of my 10 worst tarot decks. And before we start this video, I just want to say that when I say worst tarot decks, what I'm referring to is decks that I don't get along with, decks that don't inspire me and I can't work with them. In no way are they decks that have got anything, I've not got anything against the artist. They're not decks that have got anything wrong with their art. There's nothing there that I can, you know, I'm not name calling, I'm not trying to put a deck down. In fact, a lot of these decks are other people's, other tarot readers' favourite decks, and a lot of my friends use these decks. My tarot friends use the decks, my tarot students use these decks. So I really don't want to offend anybody. If you use these decks and you love them, or you use one of the decks and you love them and it works for you, keep doing that. I really don't want to offend anybody. And also, if you're the artist, or you know the artist, or you're connected to this deck in any way, please don't be offended. It's just my opinion of what works for me. So without any more, we're off to the video. And as you can see, I've got a new setup where I've kind of changed my office around. So I know it's a bit bright at the front. I'm going to have to work out how to control that. But at least I've got this lovely sea view in the background. So let's start on the video. Deck number 10 of my worst decks for me is the Busca Tarot. Now, this is in Spanish, and in Spanish, this deck is called the Alchemist Tarot, and in Spanish it's el Tarot Alchemista, but it's actually the Busca Tarot. Now, the Busca Tarot, for some reason, got loads of different names, but this is a Los Caraballo version. Now, this is one of the decks that I was wanting for so long, that when I actually bought this deck, I literally cried. I was that happy to get this deck. I'd waited years and years to own this deck. And it's still one of the decks that I'll treasure the most. But unfortunately, it's not a deck I can work for. Now, it's a deck from the 1500s, and it's one of the earliest decks, and it's actually the earliest deck that we have, which is a complete deck of tarot cards. So that's really exciting that it's a full deck of cards, and the images are pretty well done. And the cardstock's very good. It's a Los Caraballo deck, so the cardstock is really well done. And I do prefer, if you're going to put borders on, black borders rather than the white borders. Unfortunately, these cards are just really, really hard to work with because they're so disconnected from what I would know as like the tarot in most ways. So every card has got like this name of a person, and it's rather biblical, mythical, or kind of Roman inspired. Now, I did read somewhere that the artist didn't know how to write, so that's why a lot of the names are spelt wrong, or it was because they was coded. And in one place I read somewhere that it wasn't that, it was just that the people he was talking about are not the people we think they are. So I really don't know. I've not studied the deck long enough. But what I do know about this deck is that it's very, very hard to do a reading with. The amazing thing about this deck, and the reason I wanted it, because when I first started on my tarot journey, I was taught and shown, and you know, the tarot community kind of believed at the time that the Pamela Colin-Smith, the Rider-Waite deck, was the first deck where all the cards had images on them, where there was all scenery. So previous to that, all the minors, like the 9 of coins, just had 9 coins on it. So Pamela Colin-Smith's deck, the Rider-Waite, was kind of the first deck to have all the cards with pictures. But actually it wasn't. It was this deck, the Busca. So way back in the 1500s, the Busca deck actually had images on every one of the cards. Now, they say that, look, the 2 of Cups, they say that Pamela Smith and Arthur Waite actually saw these cards in the museum in England when they was in a museum, and that she may have been inspired by some of these cards. Now, if you look, I mean, that's the 10 of Swords, but it is very, very similar to the 10 of Wands. So whether or not that's true, whether she did get some inspiration, I really don't know. If she went to the museum and saw these tarot decks, she would have definitely been inspired somehow with them. The 7 of Swords. I mean, you can see if we look at our traditional Rider-Waite 7 of Swords, like the guy running away with the swords. The 4 of Swords. But if you look at, let me try and look at this. Look at the 3 of Swords. that is kind of like, you know, really Rider-Waite, Three of Swords. So we can see where the Waite's been influenced by this deck, which is why I love this deck and I wanted to get it. I was like, oh my God, there's a deck with images before Pamela Smith, and I've got to get this deck. And oh my God, look at this Three of Swords, because I'd seen this card on an image somewhere. It's like, yeah, I need to get it. But then when you get the deck in your hands, there's only a few cards like that. The rest of them make very little sense, and I think you need to really study. I saw recently in a tarot group that there was a guy and he was doing like a study on every one of these cards, and it was amazing. I mean, the study that he was doing was really intense, really amazing, but unfortunately I just haven't got the time or the energy or the want to do that. So that's why this is like my deck number 10 of my worst decks to work with, because when I work with these decks I feel no connection whatsoever. So I'm so happy to have it in a collection, but not to work with. Deck number 9 of my worst decks to work with is another much loved deck, which is the Housewives Tarot. Now, so many people love this tarot deck, and the novelty of the deck is brilliant. It really is. It's like a housewife 50s, 60s, whatever type of cards, and you get all these like kitchen and housewife type things, images on them. It's a bit of fun, and I'm amazed at the amount of tarot readers that really get brilliant readings with this. I mean, I've spoken to a few tarot readers and they say, oh, I love the Housewives Tarot, and I use it, so I think that's great. But I've got a few problems with this deck of cards, and the reason I don't use it and I keep it in my collection is because, one, the quality of the card is just really bad. My quality of these cards, I don't know what other people's quality is like, but the box is brilliant, really great box, but the quality of these cards is just like having hard cardboard, and really, really not good. And the other thing is, I was going through these cards and I was like, oh, I really would like to use them, because the effort that's gone into them, and apart from the really great box, they're like little recipe cards. They come in this really cute box, and the novelty of them, and I wanted to use a real novelty kind of deck, so I thought I'll try and get over the paperwork. And then I've laid the cards out and I'm doing this reading, and I've noticed that the cards are wrong, numbered wrong. So I was like, well, wait a minute, that's the Empress and she's numbered 2, and that's the Emperor, he's numbered 3, and the High Priestess is numbered 4, and so I was like, oh, something's wrong here. And then when I googled it and had a look, it turns out that it's not wrong, it's just that that's the way they've chose to do this deck. They've chose to renumber the cards differently. So that was like, I really, in between it being a novelty deck, in between the cards being such bad paperwork, and now I've got these wrong numbers, I was like, no, are they just going to stay as what they are? A really fun, happy little deck of cards, but not one that I can work with, and that's why they're in my list at number 9. My tarot deck number 8 is the Tarot of the Secret Forest. Now, this is the box is in Spanish, but it's Los Caraballos, so it comes in 6 languages. But the Tarot of the Secret Forest, this is a really strange deck, because when you look at this deck on the internet, you'll find words like fantastic, inspirational, breathtaking, enchanted, all these amazing words that tarot readers describe this deck as. And I look at the cards and I'm like, well, I can't see none of that. It's too busy. Every card is way too busy for me, and the busyness and this like dark greeny type of colour that's on each card is really off-putting. So for a long time, every time I tried to use this deck, I was just getting lost in all this really greeny, like murky green. It's like a murky green, and some of the cards are really beautiful. I mean, look at that with the butterflies going up, but you can't appreciate the card because there's too much going on, and then there's that dark, dull, greeny colour on them. So this is a deck that I couldn't use, and I've tried for a long time, but I just kept getting lost in too much imagery, and I was trying to work it out, and then I googled it to find out a little bit more information about this deck, because Lucia Mattioli, I think she's called, obviously put a lot of effort, a lot of hard work into it. And it turns out that the tarot, in English it's the Tarot of the Secret Forest, the Tarot of the Secret Forest, yeah. It turns out that the decks that I saw on the internet the back of the cards, where mine are this really horrible green image, and it's the same image on the back of every card. It turns out on other people's decks, the back of the card is in black and white, and it's the same as the front of the card. So they've got the identical image, but it's kind of like a day and night, a light and dark, a sun and shadow, an opposite side. So you can actually read the card one way, or you can read the card the other way. And they do look breathtaking, because the black and white side part of it just brings out all the beauty in the images. And I really could see myself working with that deck. I was like, oh yeah. But when I look at mine, mine's nothing like that. So I'm not sure if I've got a dud edition, or if this is just, you know, a special edition, maybe because it was cheaper. It's definitely not a pirate copy, because I got it from Los Caraballo, I know that. But it was a special edition of something at the time, which I can't remember now. So I'm wondering if that's why I got this really horrible backs, and not the backs like other people have got. So if you've got the Tarot of the Secret Forest, and you've got the beautiful black and white backs, and you can use them reversible, let me know in the comments, because I'm really interested as to what's gone wrong. And if you work for Los Caraballo and you want to send me the original, you can do that also. But yeah, I'm really interested to find out what's gone wrong with this deck of cards for me, and why I've got the boring backs and not these exciting backs. But still, I just cannot work with this deck, and I've tried. It does nothing for my inspiration. So I'm going to leave that with a big question mark, and hopefully one day I'll have a better deck of the same with the proper backs, and maybe I'll be able to get more from them then. Right, I'm going to say a ton of Italian words now, because this is number 7, and it's Tarot Florentino Minciete. Now, there's two kind of Mincietes. Well, I think there's more than two, but there's two that I know of, the Mincietes. One of them is called the Astoria, and the other one is Allione. Now, I've seen the Astoria, the Florentino Astoria with an E. I've seen them, and they are really nice cards. They're lovely cards, and I would like to have them in my collection, because they are a really nice deck. And I saw a version of that from El Mancello in Milan. And he obviously has the most amazing cards in the world. And I've seen a version from there that was just breathtaking, amazing. But I don't have either one of those versions. I don't have the Astoria, and I certainly don't have the El Mancello version. Instead, I have this Allione version, and they are horrid. I mean, absolutely horrible to work with. The colours, and I mean, I really like old looking decks, and decks that look, you know, ancient and antique, but they're so badly done. It's unbelievable. I'm hoping you can see, and if you're thinking, oh, that's a bad image, no, it's not a bad image. The cards are a bad image. It's not my camera. That's how bad the cards are, that it makes it look like my camera's kind of gone funny. Oh, they're so hard to work with, these cards. You know, there's no need for such bad imagery when we've got decks like the Solo Busca Tarot that I've just shown you, that even though I don't like the images, they're very well done. And you know, the Visconti Tarot, which are hundreds of years before this, amazingly done. Even the Marseilles Tarot, and yet we got to these and we're like, who did these? Horrid. I know they're supposed to be like a photocopy of the original, but even the original must have been pretty badly done to have such bad. I mean, the originals must have been really, really badly done. So I'm not sure who did these cards. It comes with this little thing explaining a little bit where they've come from. The originals are in the Museum of Fournier. Now, I'm wondering if Fournier have actually had anything to do with the production of these cards, because the quality is fantastic. Considering the cards are so horrid, but the quality of the cards are brilliant. Now, I know tarot readers that like to work with this deck, because there are 97 cards in this deck, and we've got the virtues, and we've also got the planets or the horoscopes. So we've got a massive combination of tarot and astrological signs in this deck, which gives it a lot of pluses, obviously, and the quality of the cards, amazing. But Fournier are, you know, known for the best quality of cards in the world anyway. if they are from Fonia, or maybe they just, you know, work very closely, or they copied Fonia's version. I don't know what has gone on there, because I don't know who did them. And Fonia normally do put it on there. So, this is my deck number 7. Now, deck number 6 is Tarot of the Reflections. And Tarot of the Reflections is a 2005 deck by Francesco Chiampo. I had to write that down because I didn't know that. Now, the reason why this is in my list of worst tarot cards for me, and it's at number 6. Do you like my cup? This is from a friend of mine in the south of Spain who sent it to me with my name on it. It's so gorgeous. Absolutely love my cup. Now, the reason why the Tarot of Reflections are my list of worst cards is because it was so disappointing. First of all, the images in the cards are not my style at all, which is fair enough. Not everything's going to be my style. I think that's the whole point of this video, and you know, that we've all got different tastes, different styles. But it's the whole idea of what a reflection is. Now, when I read Tarot of Reflections, in my mind, I'm going, oh yeah, this is going to be a reflection. So you're going to see, you know, two sides to everything, or maybe the opposite, or maybe something different. But it's not. It's not. It literally is. Somebody, the artist, has just copied the picture and stuck the same picture on as a reflection. And you might think, well, that's what it's called, gay, you know, it's called the Tarot of Reflections. It's just going to be a reflection of the card, which is obviously a very good point and very fair. But the thing is, I just expected them to do something a little bit different with the reflection, or at least some of the reflections, and they've not. It's like they've just shoved the reflection in every picture. You know, that's the person and that's the reflection. That's the wheel and that's its reflection. There's nothing different in the reflection. Nothing. Like the Strength card could have been, you know, her reflection makes you a very slim, slender, beautiful woman. Her reflection, she may have seen herself, you know, as a very muscular, very strong. She may have seen herself as a lion. You know, the lion could have been her reflection. That's how she sees herself. And I know it's not up to me to say how the card should have been done. That's the worst thing anyone can do. Oh, that's so annoying. But it's just what, in my mind, I expect every time I open this deck of cards. You know, it's like the Hangman. We've just got two images of the same image, the Hangman. It's the Death card. We've just got a replica of his image just shoved in the corner. And it feels like on a lot of the cards, they didn't know how to do the reflection. So all they've done is just said, oh, well, we'll just have the reflection like here. It's at the top. So we just got that bit at the top. It's like they didn't know where to put it. Oh, we'll just do the reflection at the bottom. Or they've just kind of shoved it behind somewhere. And it feels like, you know, have you ever took a picture and you've got like two pictures of yourself stuff together? It feels like they've done that. So that's why this has reached my list of number 6. My deck number 5 of worst decks for me is the Klimt Tarot. Another deck that many people love this deck. And of course, if you like Gustav Klimt artwork, then you would like this deck. Because some of them are literally just replicas of the originals, and others are just based on Gustav Klimt's artwork. And Gustav Klimt was a very famous artist, if you don't know that, Austrian artist, and you'll see some of these images, like this image is so famous. I've seen it in so many places, and this one also so famous. So the fact that they've done a tarot deck about this artist is brilliant. I mean, I love the idea, the same as the, you know, the Dali decks, the Da Vinci decks, and all the decks that are based on artists. I think it's really beautiful, and it's a good way of honouring the artist. Unfortunately, as a deck, for me, this deck does not work. If I'm doing a reading and I see this card, it just horrifies me. The images in these cards are not my style, and I know so many people love Gustav Klimt's artwork, and I think it's great, but not in a reading for me, not in a tarot deck at all. I think that is so scary. Some of the images, I mean, most of the people look very ill, very sick, and, you know, basically a step away from death, most of them. And I know that's the way the artwork's supposed to be, and that's the way Gustav Klimt did his images, but it really isn't for me. If I'm doing a reading for someone and these cards are on the table, I know my client would feel very scared or uncomfortable, or depending on which one's, pretty terrified, to be honest. I mean, some of them are pretty cute, like that one. Oh, isn't that cute? But again, we've got these really pale, sickly looking people, and some of them are really, look at that, some of them are just quite hard to get my head around. And even the ones that are pretty famous images, they're still scary. I mean, can you imagine having that with the first two I just showed you on the cards? If somebody says to you, you know, asks you a question and this is what you've got, oh, yeah, as a tarot reader, you're either going to love them or you're going to hate them. Well, I'm like in the second category there. I mean, that's the fill card. I won't mind. There's nothing bad about the fill card. And yet the image we got is just destitutional. And let's see, I mean, the 10 of Wands. You know, if this is your style, then please don't be offended. I'm really pleased for you if this is your style and you found a deck of cards that you love. I just can't have these cards in a reading. I just can't. And maybe it's to do as well with many factors. Maybe it's the clients I've got as well. I know my clients. Obviously, every tarot reader knows the clientele. And I know my clients would not like these cards on the table at all. I'm trying to find a nicer one. Oh yeah, I like that one. That was on the box. That's really pretty. You know, and that's also a very famous image that I'm sure I've seen many places. So yeah, if you haven't got the gust of Klimt Tarot, and you know, maybe I'll do a review on them if you want one day. But in the meantime, that's the reason that they've hit my worst list, because I never take them out, I never use them, and they're just a deck that does not inspire me. Quite the opposite, it makes me go, oh no. So that's why they're in my hit list. Worst tarot decks for me, number 4, is Tarot of the Imagination. Tarot of the Imagination is by Ferenc Pinter. Ferenc Pinter. And the reason why I don't like this deck of cards is because it does not inspire me at all. And I think the whole idea is that you're supposed to be inspired by these images. You know, that's the whole point of them, but it does not work for me. I just cannot connect with this deck of cards. It's supposed to open your imagination, but it doesn't. And I'm sure there'll be lots of tarot readers that it does work for. And again, if you look at reviews, you're going to find some amazing reviews for this deck. Some tarot readers say, oh, wow, it really opens me up. I just pull the cards out and I'm well plugged in. Oh, it's not a tarot card deck that I feel anything for. And to be honest, you know, this is one of those decks I've tried a couple of times to use it, and it's just been stuck then in my collection, and I've kept it in my collection for a long time. I find with this deck, nothing flows, nothing's connected. I can't connect one card into the next card. And individually, some of the cards are nice. You go, oh, that's cute, that's a nice card. But then together, you know, there seems to be no connection in the story. It's very hard to get a story for me in these cards. Very hard. 3 of the worst decks is the Tarot of the Spirit Flowers, which in Spanish is just the Flowers Tarot. But in English, it's the Tarot of Spirit Flowers. And it's by Antonelli Castilli. I think I've said it right. I hope I've said it right. She did the Arte Nova Tarot, and that's a really lovely deck of cards. And to be honest, this is a Los Caraballo version, so of course the quality of the cards are pretty good. And we've got them in different languages, as all Los Caraballo cards do. And to be honest, the images in these cards are really lovely. They're so cute. They're so adorable. I love every image in these cards because when I was younger, I used to love the flower fairies. I don't know if you remember the flower fairies. It depends how old you are. But the flower fairy dolls was my obsession. I had every one of them. I mean, literally, I had every one of them. And then I had the flower fairy house and the flower fairy garden thing and the flower. Oh, I had everything. I loved the flower fairies when I was younger. So these cards are really something that pulls on my heartstrings. But the problem with this deck of cards for me is that I can't use them, because when I look at them individually, I'm like, oh, that's so beautiful. Look at that card. Isn't that card gorgeous? And oh, look at the artwork in the card. Look at the colours in the card. Look at that little boy. Oh, that's so gorgeous. And then, you know, look at this moon card. Oh, I just want to frame this and have this on my wall. This is so lovely. But unfortunately, when I put them down in a reading, they don't connect. They just don't connect to me. They don't connect to each other. They don't tell me a story. There's nothing in these cards. They feel very, very childish. And I believe that they would be brilliant for a child if it's a small child. And depending on what kind of child it is, if you've got a child who, you know, a son or daughter who wants to learn how to read the tarot, this may be a brilliant little deck for a young person. But for me, I can't work with it. I put the cards on the table and all I'm seeing is these little kids and lots of flowers, and they're all happy, and they're all living in la la land, and that doesn't help me connect with the person who I'm doing the reading with. It doesn't help me connect to their problems and their real life everyday issues. So although they are a beautiful deck just for the images, unfortunately as a tarot deck it does not work for me at all. Deck number 2 of my worst decks is this deck, which is the Tarot of Metamorphosis. And this is a really unusual deck, and it's supposed to be a little bit surreal, and transforms people into things, or transforms people. But I just can't work with this deck. And some of the images are very, very beautiful, like this one. Very well done. The artwork's very well done in this deck. But unfortunately, I mean, that's a nice reflection. A bit like in the Tarot of Reflections, I was expecting something like that. Something, you know, a bit of a contrast, something different. The star. But unfortunately, I'm too busy looking at the cards and going, what's going on in this card, and what does that mean, and why is that happening, and what's this supposed to represent? And I'm too busy investigating what's going on in the card, and it stops me from connecting to the actual card. So when I'm doing a reading, it's really hard for me to send to myself or to even listen to my intuition, because I'm the whole time trying to work out what's going on in every card. And a lot of the images just don't appeal to me. Just a lot of them don't speak to me. And a little bit like all these decks, individually they've got some really lovely cards. Individually you go, oh, that's a really nice card, oh, that's exciting. But when you kind of put them together, it doesn't flow, it doesn't work, it doesn't tell a story, it doesn't really do anything for me whatsoever. And I'm sure tarot readers that work well with this deck will have their own understanding of the deck, and there may be books on this deck, and maybe websites with a better understanding than what I've got on this deck, that's for sure. But unfortunately it just does not work for me. Really doesn't work for me. And you've got all these like modern cards that are like, wow, that's cool, but again it doesn't really speak to me. It's like, yeah, that's cool, and that's cool, look at that, wow. And then we go from that to that. It's a little bit comic like. It's, you know, it's something you'd see in the comics. And then we're going to kind of old film style images. A metal thing with a television on his head. And I'm sure the books and people who understand this deck more. Can you hear that motorbike going past? But yeah, people who understand this deck more, I'm sure, would have brilliant things to say about it, and I would be able to explain it to you. But I just can't get on with it. I'm not friends of this deck at all. My number 1 deck of tarot cards that I really don't like, I don't get on with whatsoever, and oh god, just no, it doesn't work. It's actually one of Tarot's favourite decks of cards, and that is the Aleister Crowley Tarot deck, the Book of Thoth. Now, it was done by Lady Harris in, I think it was 78, 77, 78. And this tarot deck is so famous and it's so symbolic. It's got a lot of symbolism in there, a lot of astrology, Kabbalah, people connect it to all kinds of things. It's got layers upon layers of symbolism. It seems like an ideal deck. There's many other decks of cards that have kind of followed the Thoth tradition because they follow that system. The same as you've got a lot of tarot decks that follow the Rider-Waite tradition, and a lot that just follow the basic Marseillaise. But there's so many that follow the Thoth. And I've got a lot of decks that kind of follow the Thoth footsteps. But the actual Thoth deck, I cannot work with at all. It's one of those decks that for some reason, because the artwork is very beautiful, it's stunning, it's very well done, it's very creative, and yet it doesn't just do nothing for me, it's the opposite. It kind of bothers me. It bothers me so bad. You know, we've all got an Achilles heel, we've all got, you know, that chip on our shoulder about something. I've got it about this deck. There's no way I can work with this deck at all. I just can't. And over the years I've had this deck. This is an 18 Muller deck, and it's a really good quality. Like Muller normally is a brilliant quality. This is fantastic quality. But unfortunately I threw half of this deck away because I just couldn't cope with having the full deck. That's how, I mean, that's nuts. That is going over the borderline of nuts. I just cannot have this full deck. There's something about this deck that really puts my hairs on end. And I bought it, threw it away. I bought another one, threw it away. I bought another one, got rid of it. And then when I've got this one, I've just thought, well, no, I want to keep it in case I ever do a review or use one of the cards. But at the same time, I don't want the whole deck because it just felt bad. It felt wrong. So clearly there's something wrong with me there, not the deck. Now, I don't know if it's because of the influence of Aleister Crowley, because although there's so much controversy there with him, so many people say he was a genius and his deck is the best deck in the world. He gave so much to the tarot world, to the esoteric world, about magic and rituals, etc. But of course, there was a judge in England during one of his court cases that called him the Beast. So maybe that's a big influence of all the negative stuff he's done, and I'm not focusing on the positive. But to be honest, I've not liked this deck of cards since I was a really young girl, and I don't think I even knew who Aleister Crowley was then. There was just something, the first time I ever saw this deck of cards was the edition with 3 magicians, and just that alone, it overpowered me so bad. I was like, oh, there's something about that deck I don't like. So that's just my weird way, and I cannot work with this deck of cards. I just can't work with this deck of cards. Maybe one day it will change. I mean, I've got so many decks, and I don't know if the artists are, you know, mass murderers, if they're good people, bad people, the people behind the decks, I've got no idea who most of them are. So it shouldn't bother me who Aleister Crowley was, good or bad. It's just something about that deck. So whatever happened there, somewhere, a long, long time ago, stayed there, and it's one of those decks I can't work with. And I've got students who use that deck, and they even come to my classes with the deck. I've got no problem with that. I've got no problem with other people using the deck. It's just me, not for me. If you work with the Thoth Tarot, the Aleister Crowley deck, let me know in the comments. If you like it, let me know in the comments. If you love it, then I don't want to offend you, and I really hope I haven't, and carry on working with it. But if you've also got that problem what I've got, that there's something about that deck that you can't get on with, and you've never been able to discover why, it just gives you the creeps, you know, it makes my hairs go and stand. If anything like that happens to you, let me know in the comments, because I'm really interested to know if I'm the only one, or, you know, other people go through the same. So that's my top 10 decks of my worst tarot cards, and I really, really hope you enjoyed this video. Oh, I'm dropping all the cards. If you did like the video, don't forget to hit like, touch subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.